Okay, this is Robert of MayflowerBookshop.com, and I'm here with a couple people that I don't know, but I know because they keep coming in and talking to me, and we're sharing ideas, and I realized I should be taping everyone that comes in that's cool, and not that we're enlightened, but just that we're trying to be. That's the first step, is that like the early Masons in the early fire burners of the forests of Europe, they would say, how do you know that it was a door? Like for your next, that you're going to walk through. How did you know it was a door? And they have these Zen type things. And the answer is because I met obstruction. And so that really the people who are really spiritual, they're working on the more the obstruction rather than just rushing into something of a glorified dream that we end up falling from the air and, crashing or something, So, but anyway, tell me something.
Like the true, are you saying that basically like you're, you are who you are when like things are not working out in your life? That's like really the test. So it's like, is that what you're?
No, not kind of like everything I'm doing is
like the obstacle. Like the obstacles are. Cause I see the obstacles.
No, I get what you're saying.
And the difficulties and the challenges in life, sort of like the tension that is required for a seed to grow. Like it's the Saturn Principle, it's constriction. If you plant a seed in the ground, mm-hmm. There's two forces. There's this force, the sprout wants to grow, right? So that's a natural mm-hmm. force of like consciousness wants to expand, right? But then there's also this force pushing against that is the seed wall that on one hand you could look at it and be like, oh, it's an opposition, but it's actually facilitating the growth, because without it wouldn't have the wherewithal to burst through. It's kind of like Blake said, opposition is true friendship.
Right. There's a lot of merit in what you're saying. Just want to point out, the first thing with any seed is that a root starts growing first. So the first step is it goes down, then up. And that polarity of going inward or downward and up, it goes down first. And so most of the spiritual teachings are descent, followed by an ascent of all avatars: Hermes, Jesus, Ishtar, Inanna. So in 101, you might say that Buddha taught right suffering. The first step is right suffering. So whether it's your obstacle, somebody else's obstacle, somebody's suffering, illness, death, birth, going through changes that nobody changes. You go through these changes and nothing really changes at the end, And so right suffering is that we're learning from the suffering. We're not just suffering without a sense of growing or deepening. And when you have difficult things happen, the first step usually is that you hold really still, right? The first step is Saturn, like that. You're going, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening, or somebody died, or something I lost. All suffering kind of is being stuck and immobile, but also it's losing consciousness is identified with form and breaks off, and that's what death is. Death. I have another talk I gave where I talked about death. God, quote unquote, created death to break up the marriages because consciousness got too attached to form. The marriage of consciousness to form. Tell me what you're thinking. Anytime you've been here, yeah. Oh, and tell me your names again first. Shane. Ingrid. Is that your name every day? Is it?
It is it's my real name. It's my real first name. I was thinking about what you were saying earlier. I mean, I think you weren't recording before, but I was thinking about what you were saying about how like children blame others or like adults blame themselves. Mm-hmm. Well, I've heard that like kind of similar stuff a lot in New Age, like kind of like philosophy, I guess. And I just always wonder what I wonder is like, how do we bridge that with, because in one way you can look at it as though like, what am I thinking?
We didn't start the fire, so when you say blaming others because there is a place where we didn't do this. We may have had karma, but we just wake up and this whole thing's happening. And there's a war going on, collective karma.
And like be really shitty to you, right? And be like, well, if you take it the wrong way, that's a you problem, and so it can kind of excuse people to like not act their best or do shitty things because they're like, well, if other people don't like it, then that's their problem.
Okay.
You're talking about
No, I get it.
basically.
So I just want to add.
Exactly.
Then you'll keep everything kind of short to keep moving, and then we'll come back on it. I wanted to just add to that. It's useful in the light of what you're saying. In that case, what the 3-minute meditation would be, because we're looking for these 3-minute meditations every day that can resolve or dissolve or die and get born again, or come to something that we think we're growing somehow, or that we're finding more peace. If we're not growing, we're going into a deeper peace. And so I think it's okay to hold the tension of opposites that somehow at a spiritual level, our higher self has set everything up so that we could go through trials and tribulations and be purified and come to some new knowledge and get graded. And we are the path, and we are doing, we're creating the whole thing, but we're also learning. See, there's a tension. So on one hand, I came into this and I didn't cause all these weapons in this mass Bhagavad Gita thing where I'm in the heart center between these two mountains of enemies. Yeah, so on one hand, no, you're not at fault and we're not at fault, and we we have something that's purely innocent trying to become conscious with inner sense. We're trading innocence for inner sense. And at some point, I think the adult spiritual person all of a sudden sees that there's work to do and a job to do, and that we're part of this bigger picture. And yeah, every day you should try to celebrate in love, but every day also we should try to pull weeds and heal and garden. And, the Rosicrucian thing and the early Christian thing was that we heal each other. Right and left.
Right.
And that we're love one another. And then we get lost in what does that mean? Does that mean?
Saying, though, is that,
did you finish? Let's just finish that.
There's like a time for. Are you saying there's like a time for not calling people out, but holding people accountable versus
putting your foot down and
or drawing
no.
boundaries or something versus
because
just.
I feel like some people, I don't know, like they kind of have like a little bit of like this sort of like kind of like, I don't know, for lack of a better word, like a sort of fascist attitude where they're like, well, I don't have to help anybody if they can't, get on their ass and get a job or blah, blah, blah. That's their problem. And so I don't have to do anything for anyone except myself. And
that's why we have many lifetimes. Sometimes the best thing to do is nothing, and it gives people freedom to come to it on their own, or to rebel and decide they want to be free of England. And there's the American Revolution. I mean, or there's riots in the street for anti-Vietnam stuff, and then it takes a long time to realize if Bob Hope owned oil wells in Vietnam and other rich people owned oil wells in Vietnam during the war, what, huh? And so there's a whole thing about following the money people talk about, and that you find out who's bad or who's good. There's the whole thing that somehow Santa Claus knows who's bad and good, and then he'll reward you. And then there's other people rewarding themselves and getting rewarded, and they seem to be hurting the earth. So I think when we're overwhelmed with not knowing what to do, which is most people's case, like even right now, if you say, well, this person's kind of fascist, there's the guru becomes the dictator, the parent becomes the dictator. We're forced to be incredibly ingenious to get free of the suffering that we see, and there's freedom from the suffering, ignorance and delusion and darkness and temporalness, and there's freedom too. There's freedom from and freedom to. And the freedom to, one of the reasons I have 3 minutes a day to save the world, starting with yourself, to save yourself, is that I'm convinced that nobody has real radical stillness. Like, we don't see each other very often. Like, how many lifetimes has it been? And so then when we see each other, we try to share as fast as we can and get our thing. And then, what about this? And I've been worried about... And we try to share our sufferings and what our dream is of how it could work. And then we rub off on each other and share notes, and then we part again. And if we're really good friends and lovers and fellow spiritual students in the secret, invisible University of the Rose flowering above the cross of suffering, then if we're really good friends and we touch spiritually or in our minds or hearts, and then we part, and we have a lot of friends like this, and we part, everything in between us is getting blessed by our striving and struggle for the light and the deep root and stillness, so we can still learn. And if we really have stillness after you die, you'll still be here. And so there's these ways of talking in the green tongue, the Celtic green tongue, where you hear things and it has triple and sometimes 7 levels, And so one of the things I've constantly thought is to really digest a little bit and struggle to understand what are the Tibetans saying in their Buddhism to become a Buddha, and the different systems they have, and what is Rudolf Steiner saying in his deepest books, and what is Blavatsky saying in her Secret Doctrine, Isis Unveiled, which Gandhi read, and Martin Luther King read, and Dr. Goodhart read, and Manly Hall read, and Rudolf Steiner read. I mean, if all the important people read these books, why? So a lot of people will read Blavatsky and they'll go, I don't understand it, and yeah, you're right, you don't. And so I'm saying, how do we get real knowledge as we go into our emptiness for 3 minutes a day? How do we bring our experience through the filter of real spiritual knowledge and the wisdom we attain through our suffering? How do we bring our new experience and other people's experience through the filter of this knowledge into our emptiness, so that we're not alone in our emptiness, that we're with Sophia, the wisdom of all ages and sages, and we're willing to be really still, because when you're really still, like even listening now, you'll hear what I'm trying to say. Or you might go right through whatever I'm saying and hook up to the Dalai Lama when I was with him, or Philip Knight, my first spiritual teacher, or Gelek Rinpoche, or so many, Dane Rudger, so many teachers and friends that and I too, I'll listen to what you're saying, and I might hear your mother complaining. or your teacher's teacher's teacher, see, you might see the problem I have better than I do.
Well, we're mirrors.
We're mirrors until we're suns. We're moons until we're suns. Like the moon doesn't. Yeah, that's right.
I mean, and that gets back to what we were talking about before you started the recording, which is the oneness, and why did the oneness become the many? And to me, it's like the one. It's for that mirror.
So you could enjoy yourself.
Right. Exactly.
And you could suffer yourself.
Yes. I mean,
and then you could enjoy yourself again, and then you might even get enlightened and be such a fucking fudging artist.
Well, I also think about
this. Not made for children.
I don't know if you've ever gotten a haircut and you want to see the back of your head, right? And so to me, there's something about the part of yourself that you can't see, your shat. That's just everybody. When oneness incarnates, it takes on ego. There is necessarily, it's going to have this experience of an aspect of itself that it cannot see without the mirroring aspect of relationship, which is how the oneness infinitely reflects upon itself, for eternity, basically, which is that there's like,
because it's a dance between the many and the oneness,
right?
That becomes conscious of what I'm
like,
trying to say. There's a trinity.
It's not.
So it's not just the one and the many. It's this dance that we share of interdependent cognition, and like if we're in a band, if everything we're doing is music and we all have these different parts in the song, there's one song we hear and we have these different parts to play at different times, and so there's this dance, and with that, let's end here and start another one.
Sure. Yeah.
And since you're here,
real quick though, I want to add though, because I think this adds just to what we were saying, is that
we talked about e pluribus unum on the $1 bill as the one and the many, and the many and the one. Offer one and one for all is the Three Musketeers. See, and they're like not the Three Stooges, that the thinking, feeling, and willing, and the emotions, and the physical and the mental. These are like the Three Stooges that are kind of banging around and trying to have fun and hurting each other by accident and laughing. And so everything's a comedy tragedy, like Shakespeare. But then the Three Musketeers are intellectual banging of the swords, and we get to things and we laugh at each other, and we're high on all the insights. We're high, they're always drunk all the time on something, And so then we come to the three wise men that follow the star. See, this is physical, soul, body, soul, and spirit. The three wise men follow the star. And so once we get the three, the one and the many and the dance going, there is this greater sense of wholeness that plays into this, that is a combination of Sophia's silence, the space that holds everything, as well as the a new sun that's being born within and without us.
To me, that's like the alchemical process.
Yeah.
That dance that you're talking about is that process of you're making this tincture, this essence, and it dissolves. And so to me, that dissolving is the going back up into oneness, right? And then it condenses and it gets down. And every time through that process of going up and down, it's refined and refined. So it's this idea that somehow I think it talks about it in the Emerald tablets also, that through the going up and down, that something new is being made, or something better, that if that process never happened.
The cross that's way older than Christianity is the up and down,
Yeah.
but the horizontal. See, and that's the same as the interlaced triangles. So the next little talk we'll do alchemy, and when you look at alchemy, you're really looking at it, again, another trinity that you have to stick to. And you might at some point, there's a little pamphlet I sell by Alexander Wilder, who influenced Blavatsky's Isis Unveiled and Secret Doctrine and her Neoplatonic connection. He was a doctor and a Neoplatonic guy. And he talks about this trinity of the philosopher's stone and the universal dissolvement, the universal solvent, and and the elixir vital, which is the eternal youth. And so these three components of alchemy, because alchemy isn't just up and down, that might be a guy thing.
Well, it's a part of that.
That was a joke. I hope he was appreciating. And there's somebody
process,
laying down. So, but really, it's true. I mean, everything in our body that's temporal is part of an eternal truth. And we leave you with that. This is Robert of MayflowerBookshop.com and
Ingrid.
Ingrid, our trinity here today, sharing with you for 15 minutes, 16, 17 minutes of how to boil it down to a 3-minute meditation, what you might think about. We want to think about these things in our meditation and dissolve them, and we try to find the philosopher's stone is the high you get from it, as well as the stillness, and the elixir vital is when you really learn something new, you feel eternally youthful. So bless your heart. We'll talk again soon.